Thank you, Nick, and good morning, Southeast Asia. Welcome to the 2018 AWS Summit. My name is Mai-Lan Thompson-Bukovic, and I'm the General Manager for Amazon S3. I have been with AWS for 8 years now, and I continue to be amazed at what innovative people like yourselves are doing on the AWS platform. As Nick said, this summit is for you. This is first and foremost an innovative educational event for better learning and for understanding how to build tomorrow's applications. I don't have time to go through every one of those 1,400 releases that we did last year. So instead, what I'll do is pick a few things that I think are interesting for you here in Southeast Asia to think about. And first, we'll start with who are builders and how is that changing. In today's world and in today's applications, builders are all over your organization. It is no longer just the developers and the engineers. It's the business people. It's your operations. It's your senior leaders. And just like the notion of a builder is changing, so too is your application. No longer can you expect that the only input to your application is using a keyboard and a mouse. Now you have different types of input that range from voice to data sensors with data streaming in from IoT type of devices. Connectivity is everywhere. And what that means for you is that you have to iterate very quickly. It's no longer okay to do a deployment once a week or once a month. Deployments are now happening on today's applications 10 times, 20 times, maybe 50 times a day. You have to deploy at this speed to keep changing your customer application. Because today, user context is everything. The user experience is personalized, it's customized, and it's deeply embedded in the user's world, and your application has to understand that. Once you take that combination of fast iterations and evolution, you bring it together with that deep user context, you have a better product. And when you have a better product, you have the business results you want. There is digital transformation happening all over in the world. And it's all based, for the most part, on AWS. Right here in Asia, we have many different enterprises that are embarking on this journey of digital transformation. One example is in Thailand. The stock exchange in Thailand built a whole new online trading platform that handles 100,000 users at its peak. And they did it in 8 months, which shaved between 20 and 30% off of their development cycles. Kumparan, which is Indonesia's first hybrid media platform, takes professional journalism and combines it with user-generated content to deliver millions of reads to their customers. And Kumparan also saved 30% on their infrastructure costs. But the most important thing for Kumparan was the ability to go from 9 months of development to 3. Right here in Singapore, you have Challenger, a consumer electronics retail chain. And what Challenger did is they used the AWS platform to bring together over 38 physical retail stores with Hachi Tech, which is their online e-commerce site. And so what customers can do is they can go to Hachi Tech and they can buy an item, and then they can go to a physical retail store for Challenger and pick it up. As you know, Singapore Airlines is one of the world's premier airline brands and is also in the middle of their process of digital transformation on AWS. I'm very excited to invite George Wang, the Senior Vice President of IT for Singapore Airlines, to tell you more about what they're doing. George?
Thank you. Good morning. Many of you know about Singapore Airlines. Many of you are our customers. Here, I just want to share with you a few recent achievements. We are one of the only two Asia companies on the Fortune's top 50 list of most admired companies in the world. Over the years, we have achieved many firsts. One of the recent ones is we're the first to fly the Dreamliner 787-10. We just launched it last Wednesday. Our mobile app is able to allow you to control the in-flight entertainment screens. And now, you can even continue to watch the unfinished movie from where you stopped in your last flight when you fly with us the next. However, it's pretty clear that whatever we have done in the past is not sufficient for guarantee our future success. Our ambition is to be the leading digital airline in the world. We believe what differentiates us from our competitor is the unique combination of our commitment to excellence, the service leadership, and the technology innovations. In the next few minutes, I want to share with you our digitization journey. We believe it is a continuous journey, and we are learning along the way. It's not just about implementing a few new digital initiatives, adopting new technologies. It requires a concerted effort across the company, from top management all the way to the frontline staff. There are three key components to ensure the success of our vision. The first is digitizing from the core across all aspects of business. The second, open innovation, leveraging external partners like AWS, startup communities, and universities and the research institutes, in addition to your internal innovation. The third is about refactoring the capabilities to deliver. To digitize from the core, we need to reimagine the customer journey, the way we sell to the customer, the way we serve our customer, the way we operate, and the way we enable our employees. Here, I will give you a few examples. Our mobile app is personalized for the trip and contextualized for the journey. You get alerts before your trip. You can use the mobile app to book a ride with Grab to the airport. You can download all the reading materials, your favorite newspapers, magazines, for free to your mobile devices before the flight. You can pre-select what you want to watch on board later using our mobile app. The pilot app we have developed for our pilots provides all the information they need at their fingertips for their duty, from weather information, flight plans, to their schedules, rosters, training requirements, license requirements. Gone are the days that our pilots need to carry heavy suitcase full of documents, menus. Now, they just need to carry an iPad. They now can go from home to the departure gate directly without the need to go to the airport control center to pick up all these documents. And in fact, we have closed down our airport control center for flight ops since last year. Our employee app gives us the capability to get news about a company, the deals we are interested in, and a self-service capability like apply leaves, apply travel, and claims. The second key component is about open innovations. Our annual App Challenge Hackathon is one of the largest in Singapore, and Amazon is one of the supporter sponsors for the event. Through this event, we have developed many interesting ideas and solutions for the business. Through the open innovation platform, we connect the business, the problems from the business, the challenges from business to the outside community for solutions by the outside community. And at the same time, we bring the technology in to the internal community for adoptions. To deliver the promises we have, to deliver the strategies and initiatives, we need to refactor the internal capabilities. And the first thing you need to change is the mindset. Changing the mindset is not just about changing peoples in IT. It requires a company-wide effort. In SIA, we have started a digital training program for all our ground staff, including the management, focusing on the data, the design thinking, and agile. We are aggressively expanding our technology capabilities and the technology resources from data scientists, data engineers, cloud engineers, DevOps engineers, and many others. So we welcome many of you to join us in this exciting journey of transformation. Plus, at the same time, you get to enjoy the travel benefits the company provides. We also need to change our operating model to be aligned with Agile and DevOps. One of the key technology strategies we have is going to the cloud. In 2013, after running the mainframe for 41 years, we managed to shut it down. And this is a major milestone for us. Since then, we have re-architected our backend to the microservices-based architecture, providing APIs for partner integration and for partner to re-orchestrating the customer travel journey. We have been running our analytics infrastructure from day one on AWS. After building data lakes on AWS, and we are using Redshift on AWS for our business data marts. Our mobile app was built on AWS using services like Elastic Beanstalk. 50% of our web traffic is now on AWS. And in the next few weeks, we are able to move the complete entire traffic of our website on AWS. Our message center uses AWS services like Lambda serverless computing without the need for us to do provisioning for AWS resources. From all these services and innovations in AWS, we are able to achieve 16 times faster than before. And in fact, we also have reduced the footprint of our data center to 1/4 of its original size, mainly due to our strategy of going to cloud. We use AWS not just because it is a cheaper infrastructure services. A lot more important is because the breadth of service it provides, the speed it allows to do the innovation, the technology innovation in the platform, and the ecosystem of partners it brings us to. We have announced the cloud-first strategy. All the new applications running on the cloud by default unless otherwise justified. When I was asked why, the answer is the cloud is a perfect match for the airline. As we move, we always fly above the cloud. I have shared with you our journey and the learning points. And we believe it is a continuous journey to make Singapore Airlines a great way to fly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George. It's fascinating to hear what Singapore Airlines is doing on top of AWS. The reality is that the enterprise runs in the cloud. When you work with AWS, you get more than a broad and deep set of services and tools for your cloud migration. You get the experience that we've built up over 12 years of working with different customers. And what we've done is we've pulled together some of those learnings to share with you here today. So what I'm going to walk through now are 4 different patterns of digital transformations that we've collected over the years from different customers. The first is rehost, which is essentially bringing your legacy applications as is to the cloud. The second is replatform. When you take your legacy applications, you bring them to the cloud, but then you replace different parts of your application with AWS managed services. And you get the benefit of coming to the cloud when you do that. The third category is essentially taking your back office applications and putting it with your cloud environment. And the fourth category is re-architecture, which means building your applications natively on the cloud. So let's go through each one of these. In the rehost model, this is essentially a lift and shift. We have tools to help you do this. The AWS Migration Hub is one. Another is VMware on AWS. And the benefit of rehosting is that you get the quick win. General Electric is in the process of moving 9,000 applications to the cloud. But they didn't start there. When they first started, the top-down goal that GE set was migrate 50 applications in 30 days. And time again, we've seen this be incredibly successful for companies in their digital transformation. Set a fast, achievable goal to get started. But you don't have to do it just with rehosting. You can also re-platform to get your quick wins. And so a very common re-platforming that our customers do is when they're bringing their legacy applications to AWS, they replace their on-premises MySQL database with RDS. And what they do with RDS is they get the benefits there of a very easy optimization, but they don't really have to change their application very much at all. Reprovisioning is basically bringing your back office into the same environment that you run your applications. And the goal there is to synthesize your enterprise environment. And the re-architecture is where you rewrite your application for the challenges that you know your application is going to face in the future. Now, there's no particular order or sequence for any of these data patterns. And quite frankly, you would be surprised how many enterprises start with re-architecture. FINRA is a regulatory body for the US stock exchanges. And when FINRA started their journey for their digital transformation 5 years ago, they looked at all these different options, and they chose re-architect. And they chose re-architect because the core mission of FINRA is to protect consumer transactions by looking for instances of fraud. And they were not able to keep up with the growth of their markets and their on-premises infrastructure. So they built their whole validation on AWS. And today, FINRA, 5 years later, is validating 500 billion validations every day on this architecture that they built on AWS. And so they were able to modernize this legacy application that was so central to their business. And they were able to do it very quickly. Here in Southeast Asia, we have many customers who are going through the same digital transformation. Ayala Land is a real estate company in the Philippines. And what Ayala Land did is they moved their on-premises infrastructure to use EC2, for example, to run their SAP HANA application, EBS for primary storage, and other AWS services. Right now, Ayala Land has already retired 90 terabytes of data of on-premises storage alone. And it projects a 24% cost savings in the next 5 years compared to running SAP HANA on premises. HaloDoc is an Indonesian startup. And what HaloDoc is trying to do is bring together medical providers and medical services into the home by offering medical teleconsultations, at-home pharmacy, at-home lab tests. And they've built on AWS. And their goal was to improve their agility. And what they were able to do is two things. One is they were able to cut their IT costs by 20 to 30%, but at the same time, they were able to deliver the type of services of response time to connect a patient with a doctor to a very low latency rate. All of this is possible because we have over 130 services that have the broadest spectrum of capabilities and the depths for each one of those building blocks. When we think about the capabilities that we provide you, we think about things like storage and compute, but we also think about services like Trusted Advisor. Trusted Advisor is a service that proactively looks and checks your resources and recommends ways to reduce cost or improve your security, among other things. In the last couple of years, Trusted Advisor sent 2 million notifications to different AWS customers, giving them recommendations for how they could reduce cost. That 2 million notifications amounted to roughly 350 million in cost savings. And this is one of the reasons why I think AWS is such a unique provider and partner for you on your digital transformation. We're not just about building the application. We're here to help you save money over the long term, because that's how we believe. Just in the last 12 months, we've launched 30 services. And I'll go into some of them in my talk today. But the key thing that we want to do in Singapore is to give you the choice and the capabilities that you need for your digital transformation. And as part of that, I would like to introduce some of the newest members to the Singapore region. In March, we launched a new service in Singapore called Snowball. Snowball, I have one over here, is a data transport device. And you can get it in two different sizes. You can get a 50 terabyte Snowball, and you can get an 80 terabyte Snowball. And what Snowball lets you do is to take this device and plug it into your network and move storage from your on-premises data center into an AWS region of your choice. There's an electronic e-reader here, which automatically contains the addressing information of your local AWS region. So you just order your Snowball, it shows up, you plug it in, you start downloading your storage, and away it goes. As of today, available is also the AWS Snowball Edge. Same Snow family as the original Snowball, but it's different. In the Snowball Edge, you have 100 terabytes of storage, but you also have compute. You have compute capabilities, and you have Lambda processing right here on this device. And what it's built for is long-term data transfer. And so what I mean by that is you can order a Snowball Edge, and you can keep it a while. It's built to go out into different locations, to collect data, to allow you to process that data on the device itself. And when you're done with all that, you can either keep it for even longer, or you can send it back to your local region. As an example, Oregon State University has a very prestigious marine center. And they send research ships out to collect ocean and fish population data. And they take a Snowball Edge with them. The Snowball Edge can be clustered to increase your processing power. And so they bring a few of these onto the ship. And as they're bringing data about ocean and fish behaviors, they're ingesting it on the ship on a Snowball Edge, and they're doing processing using Lambda right there. That's an example of the AWS innovation and how we're constantly reimagining how we can help customers with what they can do. But it's not just that. It's also the storage gateway, which is also available today. The storage gateway is launching today the tape gateway, which is now available for any of your migration needs for tape to come to AWS. So storage gateway is our way of providing a virtual appliance that you can install in your on-premises architecture, and it provides standard storage protocols that help you move storage into the cloud. So there's different types of gateways. So for example, if you want to move files into S3, you can use the NFS file gateway, and you can download that onto on-premises, and you can mount your NFS gateway to your S3 bucket. Now you can do a tape gateway in Singapore. It takes a VTL interface, which is a standard tape interface, and it just drops into your existing backup workflows so that you can move your tapes into S3 or Glacier. There's support for the leading backup applications, so you don't have to change your different backup providers and workflows if you want. And the idea here is that it just seamlessly works with your existing architecture, but it makes it really easy to move away from your offline tape libraries and move to the cloud. Those are two very different examples of the type of innovation we do, where we not only provide a new way, a new capability for doing something with my Snowball family, but we also respect the infrastructure that's already in place and make it really easy to get started using the cloud. As I said, we have been working with customers for over 10 years. And what we've done is we've helped them reimagine their applications in a 21st century architecture. And as part of that, we've put together a well-architected framework. The well-architected framework breaks down these modern 21st applications into 5 different categories. And for each one of them, we have guidance, services, tools, and best practices that can help you in your journey. We've also introduced a set of principles that we've learned over the years are very important in building today's application. One of them is stop guessing at your capacity needs and take advantage of the elasticity that you have with the AWS platform. And we did this with Involve Asia, right here in Southeast Asia. So Involve Asia, we worked with them very closely on their well-architected framework. And what we found is that they were over-provisioning. And they were over-provisioning in provisioned IOPS in particular. And so we sat down with them, and we went through the principles of the well-architected framework. And they ended up re-architecting their application, adopting services like Elasticache and DynamoDB. And their overall cloud spend went down by 75%. With great performance through the 2 major e-commerce events that they ran. And given that Involve Asia is a provider of targeted advertisement, that combination of lower cost and high performance was very important to them. In the well-architected framework, we talk about security. There's no greater job that you have than to protect your information and your customers' information. We believe that, and just about every company in the world should have that same mission as well. So in the well-architected framework, if you think about security, it gives you advice like how to build the right identity structure in your organization and what services to use for that. But we have a lot of tools across the AWS platform for security as well. The most important one of these tools is encryption. This is the foundation of your data protection. I love this saying, dance like nobody's watching, but encrypt like everybody is. That's really important, and it couldn't be easier to do on top of AWS. Just for S3, we have 3 different ways to encrypt. You can encrypt server-side, where we keep the key. You can encrypt client-side, where you keep the key. And we have many customers in the financial services sector, as well as enterprises all over the world that use our Amazon Key Management service to store the key, and they keep control of it through that service. S3 also has a default configuration where you can just turn on encryption on your bucket. So any data coming in, whether it's uploaded through the console or sent in through an API, is automatically encrypted. We make it possible in every service in AWS to make sure that it's easy to encrypt, like everybody is watching you. But I do have to say, you're on your own for the dancing. Encryption is ubiquitous across the platform. We encrypt in transit, we encrypt at rest with our different storage and database services, we manage the encryption keys in KMS, and we provide the auditing capabilities in auditor tools, auditor services like CloudTrail. Because we know that security is everybody's job, and we want to provide the tools for the different people in your organization who participate in the security process and make it easier for them to make sure that your data is secure. One of those principles for the well-architected frameworks is to use data to drive your applications. And one of the most fascinating and incredibly useful ways to do that is through machine learning, where you can use data and inferences made on that data to build smarter applications. We have 25 years of experience in Amazon doing this. We have been doing it for recommendation and similar items. But it's not just us. Netflix, another company that uses machine learning, says that 75% of what is watched today on Netflix is driven by a recommendation, which is in turn driven by their machine learning. It also applies to many other different types of industries. Pinterest, every time you upload an image to Pinterest, it's moved through different machine learning algorithms where the image is assessed for fraud, it's assessed for scamming, and it's classified, and it's created with a whole taxonomy that Pinterest uses in order to streamline and customize their advertising. So whereas in Netflix, the product is the show to watch, in Pinterest, the product is targeted advertising. But they're all done through machine learning. Right here in Southeast Asia, Sunday Insurance uses machine learning algorithms to optimize customizing insurance policies for customers. These machine learning algorithms analyze risk. And what Sunday Insurance is able to do is to give 10 to 20% lower premiums than traditional insurers because they're using the technology of machine learning. Huddle is a service for coaches and athletes all over the world. And what it does is it uses machine learning on high-definition video. And it creates patterns, and it gives recommendations for coaches to improve the play of their teams. And it operates at an incredibly high scale. Huddle processes 39 hours of high-definition video every minute as part of their machine learning. Now, machine learning has long been in the domain of experts. Certainly at Amazon, that has been true. And we have applied that machine learning in different ways since that first recommendation engine so many years ago. One example of that is Amazon Prime Air. What Prime Air does is it delivers packages to you within 30 minutes of your purchase on a website to your house. And the way that it does that is it uses drones and machine learning. And those two technologies in combination make it possible to introduce this new experience to Amazon customers. In fact, there's a whole lot of machine learning going on at Amazon.com, Amazon the retailer. We have thousands of employees across the whole company that are focused on AI. And here are just some of the different applications that are at use. And when Amazon was first coming to machine learning, we realized that in order to have engineers all across the company be able to build experiences with machine learning in it, we had to figure out how to build common services so that the smart people that work on our different products can take advantage of them. And we did that. We created a platform internally for machine learning, and now we noticed that it sparked all kinds of different ideas for applications within Amazon.com. And in fact, many of our AWS customers are running machine learning on AWS today. Where you have a significant data set, you often have a significant opportunity to drive learning off that data set to help your business, to help your customer experience. And it's this incredible potential that in many ways is sometimes untapped. Right here in Southeast Asia, we have customers that are running machine learning. Shopper is a really interesting example. Shopper helps fashion brands target and recommend new outfits to buy. And the way that it does it is that it analyzes 100 million social media images every month. It uses Amazon recognition to do this, and it takes the analysis, the machine learning from that, and it combines it with fan demographics to give back to the fashion brands for their targeting. And then there's FinnAccel, a large Indonesian B2B e-commerce company that serves over 500,000 business customers. And what FinnAccel does is it combines the different channels of their web and their mobile and their call center and their service center, and they built a chatbot and a prediction engine running on AWS. And what they found is that it's increased the sales conversion by 21% by just being much more targeted and customized to that particular individual using any one of those channels. So in AWS, we have a whole set of options available to you. If you are one of those data science practitioners, if you're a machine learning expert, we give you AMIs and we give you frameworks. And what those experts tell us is they want choice, and that's what we provided. If you are an engineer that wants to train and build your own data models, we provide Amazon SageMaker, which is a fully managed service to run AI for engineers. And if you don't really want to learn your AI models, if you in fact just want to use an application service that has the ML built in, we have a whole suite of application level services available for you. And they range from recognition, which is available for both image and video, Poly and Lex, which are our text and speech translation services, our text services, and then we have transcribe, translate, and comprehend, which are all available for you to use with the ML built in. Let's talk for a few minutes about SageMaker. SageMaker is there for engineers who want to interact and use their data models, but they don't want the heavy lifting that goes along with it. SageMaker is a fully managed service that lets you build, train, and deploy your machine learning models. It's built around this concept of notebooks, which is the typical approach used today to describe your models. And it includes a whole set of optimized algorithms that you can choose from to run at scale. You can do training with one click. You can change the parameters of your algorithms and retrain. And once you're satisfied with the quality of your data model, you can deploy it and have it be managed by auto-scaling. So what we've done here is we've taken the complexity of the machine learning workflow and we've reduced it significantly. Here are some of the steps to get it into production, and what SageMaker does is fully automate and manage the process for you. We had a group of solution engineers in the Australia region, and they were in the process of building a 737 simulator, machine learning on top of the AWS platform that would simulate flight paths for pilot training. And it was pretty complicated. Here is all the things that they had to do, and they had to do it without SageMaker because we didn't have it available at the time. Now, halfway through their project, we launched SageMaker, and the team was able to go back and reconstruct all the things they had to do, but with SageMaker taking the place of so many of the steps. And as you can see, not only were they able to adopt it, but it significantly simplified their process for integrating ML into the simulation. So where do we start? If you're a developer and you're not familiar with ML and you don't want to train your own models, you get started with our application services. We have a whole suite of services that you can use. Lex gives you that automatic speech recognition and natural language understanding. Poly gives you text-to-speech. Both of these application services are the foundation for how Alexa works today. Then you have recognition, and you have it for image and video. And we have a whole number of text-based AWS ML-based services: transcribe, translate, and comprehend. These capabilities have ML built into it, so you can just take advantage and use the service without having to have expertise yourself. Another way to drive your application with data is to use your analytics and to build your analytics on top of AWS. It's one of the things that George from Singapore Airlines talked about. We have a lot of customers today that are running traditional commercial databases on premises, but they don't like those prohibitively expensive licenses. And so we've seen over 60,000 unique databases migrated to AWS using the AWS Database Migration Service. And when they migrate, they often migrate into a cloud database, moving away from that commercial on-premises data store into Aurora. Aurora launched right here in Singapore in March. And it's been really exciting to see the adoption that's happened here in Southeast Asia. Aurora is our fastest growing AWS service ever. And the reason for that is because it's this incredible product, this incredible managed database that gives you the ease of use for the MySQL and the Postgres interface, but it gives you up to 5 times better performance. It is at least as available and durable as a commercial database, but it's 1/10 of the cost. And so when customers are doing this database migration to the cloud, we're often seeing them move into Aurora. We have tens of thousands of Aurora customers, and some of them are running very much at scale. Expedia is a travel portfolio consisting of 1,500 websites. And they have over 1 billion rows in their main Aurora table. And so you can see that no matter what size of database you have, Aurora fits what your needs are. Now, some of our Aurora customers came back and they said, I have unpredictable workloads. And since I have unpredictable workloads, I don't really need the full instance, the infrastructure of Aurora. And so what we did is we built for those customers Aurora Serverless, which gives you on-demand Aurora. It's an on-demand database. You no longer have to manage your database instances. And so for where you have applications that have consistent performance, the workload is predictable, such as real-time bidding, a standard Aurora instance is going to be a great choice for you. But where your application needs change over time, you can easily switch your existing Aurora database into serverless. Now, the funny thing about data analytics is that 80% of what you do today with data analytics are not actually data analytics. Only 20% is the data analytics. 80% is the work that you have to do to get to the point of actually analyzing your data. And there's a lot to be done. When we think about the modern data architecture, agility is key. Agility is key, and when you're spending 80% of your time not doing analytics, that runs counter to what we're trying to do with the modern data architecture. And in fact, you actually do have to do all those things. It's complex. There are many different operations that you have to do. How do you manage the preservation of your original source data? How automated can you have the ingestion of data? These are real problems that businesses face with their digital transformation. And the challenge, the reality in most enterprises today is all that data is collected in silos. And so how do you take that siloed data and those complex processes, and how do you create a modern data architecture on AWS? Well, the place it starts is automated ingestion. Many customers write directly to the S3 API, but we have customers that stream petabytes of data using Kinesis streams that have Lambda functions operating on those Kinesis streams. Your data itself is going to reside in the building blocks of storage, whether it's file, object, block, database. And within those individual building blocks of storage, we continue to innovate and drive more capabilities and more depth. S3 was the first AWS service launched. It was actually launched on Pi Day 2006. And we continue to innovate all the time. And one way that we have innovated is that we've introduced native SQL expression support directly on your object storage. You can use the same syntax for S3 Select or with Glacier. And what you can do is go into the object that you have in storage and just pull out the bytes that you need. You're using SQL expressions on storage at rest, which means you don't have to pull the whole object out of storage to run your data analytics to find the 10% of data that you want. You can do that filtering directly in the storage itself. No other provider offers this, and it's just another example of how we continue to drive depth into the platform. These are other capabilities that you need in your your modern data architecture. And lifecycle management and storage is something that we provide as well. The ability to automate the movement from S3 to Glacier. And we also provide a set of services that put governance and controls on top of the data that you have. Another capability that is newly available in Singapore is Glue. Glue helps you get the most out of your data. What Glue provides is a fully managed ETL service, and it's serverless. What that means is you point Glue at your data, Glue will go discover it, it'll build a catalog for it, and that data will be available within minutes for querying by Athena, Spectrum. Any of your data providers that you use for your querying are compatible with AWS Glue. And so what it does is it connects the dots between your storage and your analytics profile, or your analytics services. And there's no greater set of analytics and machine learning services than what you find on the AWS platform. And in fact, AWS is the only place where you can have this comprehensive modern data architecture, because for each one of these different categories of what you have to do to get to your analytics, we provide multiple options and services like Glue to make that process even easier. And that spans everything you can think of, from analytics to discovery to integration with security and governance. And our goal here is to remove all the heavy lifting of data analytics so that you just end up spending most of your time on the analytics itself, with only 20% of that time on prep. And in fact, most analytics that are occurring in the cloud today are happening on AWS. And here's just a subset of our total customers that are doing analytics with AWS today. Right here in Southeast Asia, we have Momo. Momo is a Vietnamese mobile payment startup, and it uses AWS to perform data analytics at scale. Momo consolidated all of its data into S3 as a data lake and is using Athena to directly query S3 log files and get the extraction of data that they need. And what it's done is it's improved their data analysis time by 5 times, which leads them to have quicker business decisions at a much lower cost than what they were doing before. NTUC Link is a loyalty program with 2 million members, and it uses AWS using S3 for Data Lake, EC2 RDS, to quickly and effectively deliver user insights about the members of the loyalty program. We have other customers, and I'm happy to introduce one of them to talk in more detail about what they're doing with data analytics and the modern data architecture. Central Group has implemented their own modern data architecture on AWS, and I'd like to invite Axel Winter, Group CTO of Central Group, to tell us more about it. Axel?
Good morning, and thanks for coming by and seeing the show. I'm not only the CTO, actually, I feel like the chief secretary, trying to pull all of these pieces together. These pictures here actually are some of our malls, if you can see it on the slide, and so we're seeing we have quite a bit of ambience there. Now, as many other organizations you have heard about, there is this trend of transformation, of digitization, of adopting technology, and in a way, 2 years ago, before I started, there was the same discussion at Central Group, and so they called me in and said, "Well, can you help us actually set this up and think through how we best do this, right?" So we created a technology organization with some very fabulous people, I'd say the best in the industry in our team, and started thinking about what is the right approach on omnichannel and unified commerce and innovation also, and things like educating the business on new tools and technologies, and you see some of that here on the slide. We also picked some of the partners there. So my belief is that the most important thing is to have core skills and deep skills. So we didn't want to have 1,000 people or 10,000 people, or we wanted to really have the top 50, the top 100 in the industry to drive a cool architecture. Now, when you think about journeys and changes, so we haven't tried to migrate or to rescue some old platform. We have just envisioned a new platform, a new setup, fairly much like a startup would do it. And we came together with the business and said, "Hey, how do we do this?" Right? So when you look actually at what some of the organizations do today, is you see on Facebook this clickbait on retailers dying, banks dying, everybody's dying, and only startups are succeeding. And so we thought that, well, that's actually not the real story, right? The real story is that we all have very comprehensive lives. We go out and have a coffee, we buy something online, we go see the movie, eventually we work, more or less. And in that way, you can also see that it's what we have to do is become better at our game and connect on and offline, partner with different, maybe also new entrants, as we have done with JD.com. So this is where the journey came from, and what the business asked me to do was saying that, well, obviously we want more revenue and be better, more productive, as all of you can imagine. But the real story is that we actually don't know what we need next year, right? What we want to make sure is that we have a platform, we have a framework in which we can build whatever we want when we want it. And so what then the idea was to actually craft this journey in all these principal areas which you see there on the slide, to saying, hey, let's have these capabilities, let's roll them out fast, and let's then start evolving our thinking. So you see an extremely aggressive timeline there. I found it aggressive, sleeping at the office quite a few nights. And this year is really more about rolling out a platform to different business units in different countries, and starting to think about the next wave. Now, what is the content there? I would assume that it looks very similar with most of you. you know, we are looking at the core is really an omni-channel online commerce platform linking back to the traditional business. So if we have a concert at a mall, then why couldn't you book tickets online? You know, so if you buy something, you pick it up and so on, right? So if you're a member, we have about 13, 14 million loyalty members. You know, what is the story? What is interesting to you? How can we help you have a better experience? So that's probably the core. There are also newer channels. So this is not only about a mobile app and a website anymore. We're thinking about how do you do commerce with Line. So we have a concierge service online where you can request different things on the Line app, and so you can see that there is quite a bit of differentiation there, new channels, new touch points, which we have to link back. And of course, this is all data driven, as we just heard in the presentation. It's quite important, you know, to be more narrow, more focused on that side. When we then look at some of the breakouts, so data was the most important point in 2013. A couple of years back, I started with Hadoop architecture and data lake architecture at Standard Chartered Bank, and you know it was obviously all on site. So this didn't really go where we wanted to go here when I started last year, and we said, well, no, this has to be done in the cloud, and so we didn't even think about which cloud. It was fairly obvious that we wanted the best player there, and then had services, as you say here, going on, ingesting real-time data as far as they're real-time, categorizing it, having a schema registry, making sure we see data which is transformed, non-transformed, so you have an easy self-service for the end users. So using mostly AWS services here. And one of the good things, I think, which didn't come across in the prior presentation is don't underestimate the ability to take one-side managed services like Kinesis and maybe SageMaker, but equally the ability to add on your own services and components, right? So it's a fairly open platform, which is very important for us, right? Things like NiFi and Ranger on a security side, maybe using Solar instead of Elastic sometimes. All of these things are extremely important. Then on the integration side, I'd add this is may not be as interesting, not as sexy anymore because we all do it. But the thing is, when you do it in the cloud or onshore, it has dramatic differences. If the integration layer can never be down, it has to super scale. We can also not say we can't support another few requests anymore. Today, only if one business unit we run over 2,000 requests a second, so through this layer. So it has to be fairly stable and scalable. If you imagine integration, we are integrating not only with some of the legacy ERPs, we are integrating with databases, we are writing a service layer around that, around files, we're integrating with some of our partners like JD and others, and you can see that also the capability layer is not always the same. So I mean, sometimes you can pick delivery slots in some systems you can't. But of course, if you have a standard API layer, it has to work out the same. We have rolled this one out in about 2 months and start implementing individual services on it. So it's an extremely fast-paced journey. Actually, the first one, which was full CI/CD, as we rolled it out, very, very powerful platform. One thing I wanted to break down there's a lot of talk about orchestration and how do you manage different images, and I felt that a lot of larger corporates are confused about this topic. I said this, we actually didn't spend almost no money on it, as I say, and we use Terraform, we codify the environments which we are building together with the application and infrastructure teams in Bangkok and in Budapest. It was extremely easy for us to get to the right set of infrastructure and then roll that out. We're building a complete environment today within 60 seconds. The investment was less than 10K for us to get there. Let me, in summary, say is that the most important thing is that we have a strategy and we're not trying to react. We need to drive forward to what we're trying to achieve and then execute it. Maybe take the learnings on the road, but not jump left and right. Keep executing and focused on doing your strategy. Building a big team, building a good team is more important, which we have, and eventually making sure that you keep the game going. And that's that.
Thank you. It's great hearing all these different stories of digital transformation. And I think one of the things that's common across everything that you're hearing is compute. In AWS, we have 3 different categories of compute for you. The first is one that you know quite well, which is virtual machines. This is an analog to what you have in your physical data center, and we have an incredible variety of compute capability in this class. We also have a category of containers and serverless. And what I'm going to do next is break down each one of these and give you some examples of how customers are mixing and matching. Again, most customers don't use just one of these categories. They use different categories for different workflows in their digital transformation. So let's start first with virtual machines. Because this emulates physical infrastructure, it's often the place where a lot of customers start. It's great for migrations, and it's also great for any type of workload that you're running. And our commitment to virtual technology is that we will provide instance types for any type of workload that you want. Whether you have you're running big data optimized, or you need general purpose, or massive in-memory compute, you have a wide variety of choice. And not only do you have choice in your compute instances, you also have the choice for capabilities that are unique to our platform, like elastic GPUs. With elastic GPUs, you can add them to your instance of choice to beef up graphics processing, or if you just need to add some more cores, extra cores for machine learning. You have that choice and you have that flexibility because you can use elastic GPUs with different types of instances. I think the most important thing for me is that when you're using this spectrum of compute instances, you can change out your instance type anytime you want. And this is one of the reasons why the cloud is so different from on-premises. You can have your application needs evolve and change, and you can switch your instance type. You can also use serverless. And with serverless, it provides the ability to take your monolithic application and break it down, refactor it into microservices. And you can scale those individual microservices differently for how they're used in your application. We provide our Elastic Container Service, which is a fully managed service for all of your containers. And it handles the cluster management for you, and it has deep integration with services like Autoscale, so it takes the difficulty of managing containers away and automates it. We have many different customers who are doing amazing things with containers. Here are just a few of them. But a lot of those customers came back and said, run Kubernetes for me. Now, the fact of the matter is, Kubernetes is run on AWS EC2 instances all the time, but our customers were asking us for a fully managed service, and so we launched EKS. And what it does is it takes the same model we had for the container service and it applies it to Kubernetes. But we have other customers that say, I just want to build. I don't want to manage clusters. I don't want to even think about the container model. And so we built AWS Fargate. AWS Fargate is a serverless mode where you don't have to deal with any infrastructure at all. Everything that you're doing is managed at the container level, and you only pay for what you use. And so in our container family on AWS, we have 4 different options for you to choose from based on what your digital transformation needs. Our final category is one that we invented and created with the launch of Lambda. And with Lambda, we're introducing the capability to build event-driven code. And whether it's triggering on changes in your data store or any other trigger that you want, you just write a function, and we'll run it under the conditions you indicate, and all you pay for is the compute of the function. At the end of the day, builders just want to build business logic. And to be honest, we do as well. And there are many serverless application architectures today on AWS. S3 was the first. With S3, you're not thinking about drives or any of the other physical infrastructure. All you're dealing with is the gigabyte per month that you pay for. We have other examples like DynamoDB and many other examples that you see here. The benefit of this is you no longer have to think about infrastructure. All you're thinking about is the unit of the resource that you pay for. And so the benefit of a serverless application is, of course, you don't have to manage servers. You have flexible scaling, and you don't have to worry about idle capacity. And that is very important when companies are looking at resource utilization and then the cost of their infrastructure. We have a lot of different customers doing serverless, and you might imagine that many of them are startups. It's true. Many of our startups use serverless, but an amazing amount of enterprises have particularly adopted Lambda because it just makes sense. And it's an easy way to go to that re-platform mode that I talked about, where you're moving your existing architecture onto AWS, but you're just swapping out one or two things to take advantage of the managed service. Very common pattern is to swap out some business logic for Lambda functions that work on your application. Right here in Southeast Asia, we have a number of customers. Here are just a few examples of using serverless. MediaCore Digital Operations and Business Team runs a business operations dashboard on AWS. Initially, they weren't using AWS, and they were trying to put this dashboard together. And it took about 3 months, and it got too hard. It was too complicated. So they moved to AWS, and they used a combination of S3 to store their data, Athena to query it, and Lambda to do processing on their data. And they built this business dashboard in a week. And it was 100 times cheaper than what they were planning to do before. Now, the goal for this MediaCore dashboard is to track utilization of IT resources and to do chargebacks to different departments within their company. It's a very common scenario. And what they found is after they rolled this out, they saw a 30% improvement in resource utilization for their company. And the reason why is because the dashboard enabled the different parts of the organization to have visibility into spend. Norex is a precision marketing platform, and it's targeting brands and agencies and media companies. And what they do is they are actually running Kinesis streams with Lambda processing directly on them. And they've increased the performance of their data analytics, moving from hourly processing to real-time processing by over 6 times. And they've dropped the cost of that infrastructure dramatically. And again, using this serverless architecture where you have a Kinesis stream coming in and the processing happening right on top of it. Eatigo is a service that was connecting empty tables in restaurants with hungry diners. And so what Eatigo does is it does that connection and offers a discount to customers. And they were moving off on-premises onto AWS because at peak, which is meal times, their on-premises hardware wasn't able to do it. And what Indigo is doing is they're actually using a combination of containers and Lambda functionality to deliver a significant drop in the overhead. They dropped their amount of server infrastructure management they had to do by 90% while getting a 70% improvement in performance and cost savings. And so you have this widespread of compute offerings from server to serverless. And the key for us is choice. We know that digital transformations happen in different ways all over the world and right here in Southeast Asia. And we want to give you the ability to pick and choose which ones of those you need to do. And so what I'd like to do is invite to the stage the CEO of FinnAccel. Now, FinnAccel is a technology company, a financial technology company that leverages deep analytics to automate credit risk scoring and access to consumers in Southeast Asia. And to tell you a little bit more about how they're using our different forms of compute, I'd like to welcome the FinnAccel CEO, Ashkay Garg, to the stage. Ashkay?
Morning, everyone. How you doing? I'm Akshay, the co-founder and CEO of FinnAccel. Oh my God, there's a lot of people here. I just realized why we're actually up here. Not only because we're Amazon customers, but because it's the perfect triad. Singapore Airlines wants you to fly more. Central Group wants you to buy more in its malls. But how are you actually going to purchase? That's exactly where we come in. So some of you might not have actually heard about FinnAccel before this, so allow me to give you a very brief introduction. We are the single largest and fastest growing digital consumer lender in Indonesia, and probably even in terms of our scale today in Southeast Asia. What we really are is a next generation retail credit payment solution. The way we actually do this is by combining two real-time engines in one go. One of which is really a real-time credit risk processing engine, and the second is a real-time transaction engine. So we allow you to essentially apply, get processed in real time for your credit score, and be able to buy literally within a couple of minutes of that. The way it really works is as simple as 1, 2, 3. It takes you 1 minute to download our app from the Google Play Store or the Android App Store, or the Apple App Store. It takes you 2 minutes to connect a few accounts, including your e-commerce accounts, social media data, bank accounts, and so on. It takes about 30 seconds to process your data and approve you. And finally, right after you're approved, you can actually use the product exactly like a credit card, which is to say that you can buy on any partner e-commerce store and pay back within 30 days without any charge, or all the way up to 12 months on an installment plan. Very simply, it's a credit card. Moving on just a little bit, right? We're trying to solve for this problem of lack of access to retail credit in Indonesia. One of the very interesting facts about a market like Indonesia is that you've got a country of 250 million people, a $1 trillion economy, but there's only about 10% of the middle class. The middle class by itself is about 70 to 80 million people, but you've only got about 10% of the middle class which actually has access to any unsecured credit product from a banking institution, which forces a lot of individuals to go to consumer finance companies who charge them an arm and a leg in order to purchase something offline. At the same time, this country has some massive drivers for retail credit. You've got one of the youngest populations in the world. It's one of only 3 or 4 countries globally where nearly 50% of the population is below the age of 30. It's also a country with a very high penetration of smartphones. Nearly 110 or 120 million people carry a smartphone at this point of time. Oops, sorry, I think I went back to the previous slide. Right? So in effect, Indonesia is the perfect storm, right? Through a combination of a very large young population, which is mobile first, and a population which is very aspirational because the country is middle income, but is denied access to credit. So where we really come in as a young startup, as a 2-year-old company, is to come up with a product that allows these customers to apply and get approved in real time in order to use credit as a purchase mechanism. Now, when we started out 2 years ago, we were faced with 2 fundamental problems. The first one of which, was how do we design scalable services that allow us to ingest a huge amount of unstructured data in one go in order to qualify these customers in real time? And secondly, because we're a transaction engine, how do we enable a high-frequency, low-latency transaction engine which integrates with e-commerce platforms, which can actually process, at that point in time, this was about 2 years ago when we designed it, up to 100 transactions, up to about 100 transactions per second, right? Now, when it comes to unstructured data, by itself, for every individual user who's connecting their bank accounts, e-commerce accounts, social media and data, and so on, we're processing or ingesting up to 20, 30 megabytes of data in real time per user, on whom we've actually got to process a credit score and an application score in that very instant. When it comes to enabling the transaction engine for each e-commerce site, at the time the user is actually transacting, we're also computing and detecting a fraud score in real time, right? Enabling a customer to either buy or block that transaction if our fraud engines indicate that this user is very likely to default. These were pretty significant challenges at that time, and we chose to host our entire stack on the AWS stack. Now, let me just spend a minute describing to you a little bit about our business layers and the technical layers. Our business layers can be very simplified at a high level into 4 major layers. One is the application layer, where you have things such as the OCR, the optical character recognition, and APE, which is our credit risk approval platform. The second is the application engine, the transaction engine, which allows a user to buy on e-commerce stores. The third is the data layer, literally the ETL, which is actually computing a huge amount of data in real time at 3 different points: at the time when the user is applying, at the time when the user is buying, and finally when we've got to collect money back from the user. And fourthly, the integration layers, which allow us to connect to our endpoints on both sides, customers as well as vendors. The way these business layers really get implemented at a technical level is this. The key things that I want to call out here across these 2 slides are, one, we've completely moved off EC2 instances to moving to an entirely Lambda-based framework where we're using Amazon's API gateway and Lambda to essentially now implement a serverless computing framework. Secondly, when you actually think about our data layer today, our entire data layer, which is our ETL, is hosted entirely on Amazon services using a combination of Glue, Amazon Redshift, EMR, and a couple of other services among the 130 that Amazon actually offers. And finally, just in terms of the way we're scaling our stack, at this point in time, each one of these integration layers, or each one of these business layers, is being implemented or is evolving to an entirely microservices-based infrastructure. The result of all of this work over the last couple of years is that we've been growing transactions as well as applications per month at a CAGR of more than 30%. This kind of growth for an early-stage startup is practically unheard of in Southeast Asia. We're processing and ingesting nearly 30 to 40 gigabytes of data per day. Our raw data stack now is about 20 to 22 terabytes. We're computing real-time credit scores, literally under 1 second. And finally, at this point in time, as we've scaled our stack, we're now at a point where we're actually able to handle nearly 100 to 200 transactions per second. This kind of scale has only been made possible by our reliance and dependence on the Amazon stack. In terms of what's coming up, over this coming year in 2018, we intend to continuously deploy on and on from the EC2 stack to Lambda. Secondly, we're implementing Amazon machine learning, moving away from some of our own, I would say, off-cloud machine learning infrastructure to completely being hosted on Amazon. And thirdly, just in terms of our credit scoring and risk assessment, moving on from static scoring to dynamic scoring using a combination of S3, Elastic Cache, Kinesis, and Lambda. So that's broadly a summary of where we are and where we're evolving. We think about AWS as a trusted and very critical partner in this journey to scale across Southeast Asia and build a credit card and build a digital credit card that goes and disrupts the traditional credit card infrastructure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ashke. That's pretty amazing what FinnAccel is doing. Entrepreneurship and innovation is in the DNA of Southeast Asia. AWS is a natural platform of choice for the incredible pace of growth right here because we share the value of invention, and we have over a decade of experience in helping customers like yourselves with the digital transformation. I can't wait to see what the builders of Southeast Asia will do next, and AWS will be with you for every step of the way. And with that, there's only one thing to do. You're builders, so go build. Thank you, everybody.